Every time that something new comes to be, there is pressure for it to be a good thing. Nobody wants their new creation to be looked at with disapproving eyes, but there are times when that pressure is a lot bigger than it was before. Times when failing just somehow feels worse. Well, hey, I'm Not So Ace Trainer, welcome back to the channel, and for Pokemon, I think that time is now. Let's get into it. A new Pokemon game will always have both extremes. Some people will love it, others will hate it. Even if everything was perfect from start to finish, some people would hate it anyway. And even if everything was a disaster from start to finish as well, you guessed it, some people would love it anyway. That's the way of everything in life that is subjective. That's why you find people that are not fans of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue despite some swearing by them as the pinnacle of Pokemon games. Or why some people would sell their firstborn for more Johto and others would rather see Gen 2 and its region buried 6 feet underground. Like I said, nothing is ever set in stone when it comes to something subjective, but there are some things that need to be looked at as facts, and understanding those facts, accepting those facts, is what ultimately helps us understand as well the pressure there is on Pokemon now. Pokemon releases have, for a long time now, been controversial, more than usual. Sales are always at their best. Pokemon is Pokemon, but as a Pokemon fan since the very beginning, I have never seen this much negativity. And sure, social media plays a factor here. Someone saying that something sucks will have much more attention than the opposite, therefore the algorithm will show it to you. But it isn't just that. There was a train of events that led to people having this kind of feeling towards the franchise. And I know that one day this will change. People will just talk very highly about this era of Pokemon, such is the Pokemon cycle. Believe it or not, when Mega Evolution was first announced and revealed and all that, people hated that. That was Digimon, that was not Pokemon. And now, look at everyone. But this feeling of negativity, I honestly believe like it started in Gen 7. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon was the first moment I saw this disconnect happening. The games, while not one-to-one copies of Sun and Moon, were mainly seen as a bit of a cash grab, even more than the usual third version. The debut of Pokemon on the Switch being a Kanto game was also frowned upon a little, despite it being very experimental and a somewhat new take on the OG region. But I think Sword and Shield might have been the one game that really got the hate train started with the whole Dexit situation and not meeting some people's graphical requirements. Then BDSP was nothing like what people expected from a Gen 4 remake, and even the palette cleanser that was Pokemon Legends Arceus wasn't enough to cover the technical flaws of Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. But I think that, despite the usual rock throwing that is done at Game Freak in this situation when talking about this era of Pokemon, I think the blame is very likely shared between many different people or factors, some of which are out of their control and others are out of everyone's control. The Switch was a console that was certainly weak when compared to others, and while some developers can do more with less, others can't. Or maybe they can, given the time. The release cycles of Pokemon games were always a big point of criticism, and that decision, while not completely to blame on Game Freak, is also shared by them, as it is likely made by the Pokemon Company, which are Nintendo, Creatures, and of course, Game Freak. Then there was another big thing that happened, and that I think really impacted everything from the end of Sword and Shield to Scarlet and Violet and maybe a little of ZA. The pandemic made development of many games halt or proceed in a very different way than usual. The dev cycles were already short, and now the world had made that short time likely not be used in the best way possible. But things have changed, and this is where we're at right now. The weak console is no longer the one Pokemon will be in. The Switch 2 is like 10 times more powerful than the Switch 1. The short dev cycle is nowhere what Winds and Waves will have. We had an off year in 2024 and now another one in 2026. That means Gen 10, if development started after Scarlet and Violet, will likely have 4 to 5 years of development. Dexit is no longer something people waste time fighting against. And of course, there is no real-world event affecting the development as there is no pandemic right now, and hopefully there will be none. There is no excuse this time for any flaws the games might have. What there is pressure. Pokémon Winds and Pokémon Waves are the next big step for the Pokémon franchise, and these games have, for better or worse, everyone's eyes on them. From what we've seen so far, I'd say the games look like a very positive step, a step in the right direction, but only time will tell, and only when we have the games in our consoles in front of us and we're playing them, can we really tell if they made the right decisions, if they did a good job. But what about you? Do you believe that Pokémon Winds and Pokémon Waves will come out well-baked from Game Freak's oven? Let me know down below. And now, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. But before I go, I want to thank my YouTube members Good Old Deo, Dash Plays, and Attila Santo, and my Twitch subscribers and newbies here, the Dr. Joe, Teixeira23, Lazarix, and Odd Cypher for going that extra mile. Thank you so much for all of your support.